Good afternoon. All right. So we're in the middle of discussing making matzahs. So we mentioned that we have to knead it as quickly as possible, thoroughly as possible, as quickly as possible.
This is chapter 190. Where are we?
Chapter 110. And I guess although we're summarizing, I guess we're technically up to 8. Right, so it's always got to be handled and pushed, and if some dough is left for someone, so when the person hands out the dough to all the people who are rolling, if he ends up with some dough left behind, he should start working it. He shouldn't leave it idle. And we really want to give it as quick as possible, so we're not trying to roll into any particular shape. So you'll notice that round matzahs, that's just what happens when you roll things out. You do it all even, it comes out round, but you're really not trying to roll into any shape. There's no there's no time for that. We don't want to we don't use like any cookie cutter type things, no forms, right? Anything that's going to, because again, that's delay. We want to keep it working. Now, as soon as it's rolled, we perforate it.
Excuse me, Rabbi, I'm having connectivity problems. We're on what are we on? Chapter 190?
110.
110, I'm sorry. Okay.
It's okay. Yeah, so we perforate it, and then we get it to the oven as quickly as possible. Now, we've been rolling it in a separate room to the oven because, as we mentioned yesterday, heat can cause the fermentation process to be quicker, and it can become chametz more quickly if it's hot. So the oven's in a separate room, and once we take into that room, we can't delay, because if you're going to leave the dough in front of the hot oven, it's going to heat up the dough and potentially become chametz quicker. So we don't really take it into the vicinity of the oven till the oven's ready to let it, there's to be space in the oven, and it gets put in. As we saw in the video yesterday.
Rabbi, could I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
That stick that they picked up the dough with, the stick, I ran it along all the pieces of dough and then put it in the other. What is that stick made of? Usually
wood.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and they have several of them. They sand it down between each batch. It's now when we put it in, you have to be careful that none of the matzahs are folded over, because again, if it gets too thick, it can become potentially chametz, because it takes longer to cook through. We have to make sure none of the matzahs are touching each other, and it happens. Sometimes matzahs are folded over and different things, so they put them back in essentially and burn it to crisp. They burn it to dust, right? So they want to make sure that it's, and you want to take out the matzah. It has to be fully baked, right? When it comes out, if it's going to have any dough, like we take the slice of pizza and the cheese, has that like stretch from pizza to slice. So if you have that dough stretch type thing, that means it's not cooked. We can't have that, and it's going to become a problem. All right. Now, of course, so the matzahs that we've made for the mitzvah, which again, we're not really baking our own matzahs today. So all commercial matzahs are essentially made like this. They're called matzahs mitzvah, right? The matzahs of the mitzvah, and they have to be prepared for the sake of the mitzvah. Again, in the video that we saw, before they started the batch, everyone called out that they're doing this for the sake of the mitzvah. So that's the matzah baking, I think, summed up. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to summarize sort of part of chapter 111, and then we'll do some inside as well. But before we learn inside, I just want to get everything clear. So a Jew is not allowed to own matzah allowed to own matzah. You're not allowed to own chometz on over Pesach. We can't have it in our possession, and we can't own it, and we can't have control or responsibility for it. So we have to remove all the chometz, all the leaven from our home. Now, in the old days, it was relatively easy, right? People didn't have refrigeration. We didn't have things in vacuum sealed packs. We didn't have, preservatives and different things. And so, you ate up the bread, a few little pieces you burnt, they're left over, and finished. That's the end of it. Today, many households have thousands of dollars of chometz. There's alcohol, cosmetics. Remember, so the definition of food in this respect is anything a dog would eat. So we're not talking about a dog that's been starved for a week, but dogs eat all kinds of things, right? It's I've even seen a kid try to eat deodorant, right? The dog. So there's all. Then we have things in freezers and vacuum packed and all kinds of things. So we don't necessarily want to destroy everything that we have, or the chometz. So what do? We end up doing three things, and we're going to go over each three in a little more detail. We nullify chometz. It's called bittul chometz. We nullify ownership. In other words, we make ownless at certain things. We do biur chometz, which is the removal / destruction of chometz. And then we do mechiras chometz. We sell the chometz. Now, pretty much every person selling chometz, this is a relatively new situation. When I say relatively new in Judaism, this last 100, 150 years. Might sound like a long time, but in respect to the 3,300 something years we've been keeping Pesach, it's a relatively a new custom. Used to only be rare exception. Someone had a brewery, and he had hundreds of barrels of whiskey, different things that were aging. So he would sell his chometz, but everyone else pretty much would finish up the chometz they had in their house, their 1 or 2 room house that people lived in. That was it. Even utensils, right? Today, most people have separate Pesach utensils. And again, in the old days, what did you have? You had your 1 or 2 pots. Who could afford more, and who could store it? So you kashered them, and you had your 1 or 2 knives, and you kashered them. There wasn't really anything there to sell either. So it was an unusual situation that an average householder would sell the chometz. It's a relatively new thing. So what do we want to do? Now, we can't own any chometz. And as a matter of fact, not only can't we own it, but any chometz that was owned by a Jew over Pesach, even accidentally, is forbidden for any Jew to benefit from forever. So this is why you also have to be careful if there's certain stores that are Jewish owned and they don't sell their chometz. You can't shop there after Pesach. You have to wait however long, till they get new stock. At least the chometz. I mean, you could buy toilet paper there. It's not a problem. But whatever's, when it comes to buy chometz, you want to go to buy cereal. You have to wait till they get the new stock of cereal, however long that takes. So we can't own any chometz, and any chometz is owned by a Jew over Pesach is all benefit is forbidden forever. So what do? So practically what we do is we remove whatever we can, right? That's the view. So we clean up, we Pesach clean, and we get rid of lots of things. Now, most of us have a lot that we want to keep. So what we do is we sell the chometz to a non-Jew. Now, this sale is a real bona fide sale. It's not a joke. It's not a pretense. It's a real bona fide sale. Now, we do not sell it to the rabbi. A lot of people mistakenly think that they sell the chametz to the rabbi, who then sells it. What we do is we make the rabbi our power of attorney. A halachic sale has a lot of details to it, and we need someone who knows what they're doing. And therefore, we make the rabbi a power of attorney. If you don't have someone nearby that you sell a chametz to, you can go to Chabad.org and you put in your time zone, because you needs to be sold by someone in the same time zone as you, because it doesn't help for them to sell the chametz 5 hours after you started Pesach. Then you've owned it already, or to buy it back while it's still Pesach for you. So, you enter your time zone and various things, and you appoint whoever they have in their team there to the power of attorney that they should sell the chametz for you. If you're able to, it's much better to go in person to a rabbi and give the power of attorney in person if you can. But if you can't, then Chabad.org is almost the same thing, and it meets the requirements. Now, what happens is they have a real sale. Now, a lot of congregations, if the rabbi is selling for majority, on behalf of majority of the congregation, there might be millions of dollars of chametz, maybe tens of millions. Someone owns a bakery, someone else owns a supermarket, someone else is, so between it all, you got millions of dollars. Now, good chance the person who, the non-Jew who is buying the chametz, doesn't have $10 million handy. But he has to pay up, otherwise it's not a real sale. He can't buy on credit. Right? We cannot have the sale on credit. The problem with the sale on credit is that, if I buy something on credit and I'm going to pay you next week, if I don't pay, if I renege on my payment, the sale becomes void and never happened. Right? So if he would buy the chametz on credit and then something happens, then we could end up with the sale being retroactively avoided, and then we'll have all owned chametz over Pesach, which is no good. Then we have to get rid of it all. So what happens is that we organize someone to loan him the money. So there's a third party or third parties, depending on the amount of money. Very large communities might have several people that do this, and they loan the money. So the non-Jew he borrows the money. So let's just make up a figure, $10 million. He borrows $10 million and he pays in full. And therefore the sale cannot be avoided for lack of payment. So it's paid up in full. We also generally have people who are guarantors of this loan, right? Because again, we don't want the sale to be a pretense. It needs to be real. And most people wouldn't lend the shul's janitor, often that's the person they sell it to, $10 million. It doesn't have the collateral. It doesn't have any, so we need guarantors. And he borrows the money and he buys the chametz. When it's bought, we need to tell him where the chametz is. That's why the form you fill out when you give the power of attorney to the rabbi, you have your address. He needs to have access. So in concept, he could come to your house and pick it up. Of course, then you get the cash for it. But that's in concept. He's informed what type of chametz, and it's all his. And then generally what happens, so again, if we just keep using the round figure of $10 million, obviously every congregation will be a different amount. After Pesach, the rabbi, again, still having our power of attorney, buys everything back, let's say $10 million and $1,000. And now that he gets his $10 million, $1,000, he uses $10 million to pay back the loan, and the $1,000 goes into his pocket for his, that's his profit, for his business of buying and selling. That's generally how it works. So it's a legitimate sale. I used to wish that one day he'll come and collect all my old chametz take my old pots and 10, 20-year-old pots and half-eaten cereal and my half bottle of whiskey, and I get the cash. But then as I thought about it more, I realized, but then the poor guys who guaranteed the loan, they're going to have to fork it all out. So I hope that doesn't happen. But in concept, he could. And then you would get your payment. Many times you put an approximate value of the chametz you have, so they know how much to pay you. Should ever be collected. I don't think it ever has. But that's how the sale works. Any questions on the sale? No? Okay. So it's a bona fide, legitimate sale. Has to be according to the laws of the country and the state. So if you need any clauses in there for the laws of the state, it's as well as any halachic clauses. As well as that, there's another condition they put in. They put in a condition. So if we're talking about a normal sale, not selling chametz, let's just say I'm selling 100 chocolates, right? And I don't know, let's say Ben decides he buys the chocolates, pays up, and he's going to come collect them next week when he's got his van, right? In the meantime, unfortunately, the storeroom burnt down. Part of it, we only managed to save 20 of the 100 chocolates. So being that the sale was for 100 and now there's only 20, Ben can say, I wanted to buy 100. 20 doesn't help me. So I'm backing out the sale. Here's your money back. And, sales finished. I mean, obviously he has to give the money back for the 80 that never got, well, let's leave that other side. But he can just say, I'm not interested in the sale. You weren't able to deliver the goods. So the sale's finished. Now, we don't want that to happen with our chametz, right? Because imagine, again, the whole community selling their chametz, $25 million worth of chametz, let's say, and this bakery burns down or something, and it's now only $22 million of chametz. We don't want the buyer to say, well, I want the 25, not 22. And actually, that bakery was very, very important to my business plan. And so I'm backing out of the sale. Right, because then retroactively, everyone would have owned chametz on Pesach. So we put a clause into the sale that even if something should happen to part of what is sold, the rest, the sale still stands. So that's an important clause that goes in the sale. So that's the sale. Now let's talk about the nullification, the bittul. Now, in theory, and I emphasize in theory, only in theory, let's say, even if I happen to have $1 million worth of chametz in my garage, I can turn around and say, I'm making it ownless. It's bottle. It's hefker. It's ownless. And I don't have to do anything more than that, in theory. Why do I emphasize in theory? Because most people, if they have, forget about $1 million of chametz, even $100 or something, are not going to say it's ownerless. That means anyone who wants to can just walk off the street and take it. Right? So if I have staff, let's say the things that I normally sell, let's say I've got a bottle of whiskey, a bottle of this, some wife's cosmetics, what it happens to be. So even though in theory, I could say that I'm making it ownless, the reality is I'm not being totally sincere because I really don't want someone to come take it. I'm just trying to get out of owning it over Pesach. So even though in theory, I could just make everything ownless, we can't rely on that. When do we do the bittul though? Is after we've done the search, we burnt whatever chametz that we're going to burn. We'll speak about that shortly. We've done whatever it is. The fact is, I might have missed something. One of the kids might have dropped the donut behind the closet. Could have happened. So what we do is we make anything else besides what we sold or we burned, anything else we make ownless. And the small amount that may possibly be left behind, that we've missed, that we can be sincere about. And it also helps because we're only selling what we have in mind to sell. We've only removed and burnt what we found. And it's quite possible somewhere in the house there's something that we missed, or or something. So we also then do bittul. We give up ownership of all the stuff that we don't sell and we don't remove. So it's like an insurance policy. So anything that we don't want to keep, so we didn't sell, we remove. And on the night before Pesach, we are going to do a search. So that brings us to chapter 111. So we'll do inside now. Number 1, Aleph. B'layla shlifnei erev Pesach, on the night before erev Pesach. Right. So this year Pesach is it Wednesday night? It's Wednesday night. Someone have a calendar? Yes, Pesach Wednesday night this year.
It's Wednesday night. Yeah.
Wednesday night. Okay. So we're talking about now Tuesday night. So the night before Pesach, Tuesday night, we are going to search for chametz. So hopefully by then we've cleaned up a house, we've got rid of all the chametz, and we're ready to go. Now we're really obligated to start checking from the beginning of night. In other words, nightfall, when 3 stars come out, the time that Shabbos normally ends. And we're not meant to sit down for a meal or to start doing other things half an hour before this time, because we don't want to get distracted and forget about it. We want to make sure that we do the search. Number 2, base. We use a wax candle, a single wax candle, not one that's intertwined, like a $1 candle that's got multiple wicks. One light. So we don't want to use one, right? Because the intertwined one, it's like a torch. We don't want a torch. And if you don't have a wax candle, you can use a tallow candle. I mean, that's animal fat. No, I don't think we even have them anymore nowadays. I'm sure you can buy one somewhere, but it's not the norm. Right, so the reason that we want to have a candle is we want to be able to look in all the little cracks. So if we turn the lights off in the room and the room is dark and you look around with the candle, you can see it illuminates like little spots. So I guess essentially want a spotlight. Okay, there are some people today who use flashlights. Or not. There definitely are authorities who say it's no problem to use a flashlight, but the candle is the the traditional way. A lot of people are accustomed to particularly use a beeswax candle. Apparently it gives off a nicer light that highlights the details better. Number 3, we check every room that we have a concern that chametz may have gone there. So this is going to change from house to house, to family, time to time. If you have a household with adults, primarily adults, and let's say food doesn't go in the bedrooms. So food doesn't go there. You don't have to worry about it. I mean, it could be cosmetics and other things are also chametz, so maybe have to check for that. But if you have little kids, then if you have rooms that officially no food goes there, you have to check there anyway, because you never know where the 3-year-old stashed his half-eaten chocolate cake. Right? That's how it goes. But filol hatrofim v'aliyos v'chanis v'beisa eitzim. Now, even cellars and attics and woodsheds and the garage, in other words, and kol sheyesh lochash shemachniso sham chametz. Any place where chametz could have entered there. So even if animal pet food, if it's a place where you go while you're eating, right? So you might not store food in your garage, but you might sometimes go there while you're eating with food in your hand. So some could have got left behind. So any of these places, tzrichim levodkon, you need to check them. And likewise, you have to search any utensils that that contain chometz. The kaidem b'dika, and before the search, before the search, we want to sweep the area out and cleaned it thoroughly. So we really don't want to find any chometz. We're hoping, although we're doing the search in case there is some, but really, if we've Pesach cleaned properly beforehand, we won't find any. Because we want to make it easier to search afterwards, search that room. Right. So that's the plan. Now we're going to mention in number 8 that we have a custom to put up pieces of bread, and we'll talk about more detail then. So we find something and we'll get there. But that's something that was put there deliberately to find. We really would like to clean in a way that we don't find anything. Now, sometimes you do. Some years you do. It's what happens. Number 4 was summarized. It's a cow shed and they're fed grain, or a chicken coop where they're fed with grain. So they don't need to be searched. All right. First of all, the grain might never become chometz. Now, if you buy these pellets, it is chometz. But if it's actual grain, the grain in itself may never become chometz. Second of all, a good chance it was eaten already. All right. So, my chickens, sometimes if we have leftover matzah from the previous year, we essentially grind, smash it up and feed the matzah meal, right? So we feed the chickens matzah meal, and then over Pesach, the lake Neidlach, that's how it goes. All right, so we'll squeeze in one more. So hey, we have to check every nook and cranny, every little crack. You also need to check your pockets, and particularly kids' pockets. Because sometimes kids, we put something in the pockets and we forget about it. So we have to check them. And we should shake them out at the time that we remove all the chometz. Okay, so to be continued next week. Any questions when we finish up? No? All right. Well, wish everyone a wonderful week. Wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Rabbi.
Welcome.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.